panelists, Andrew mentioned definitions. I think perhaps, shall we just agree on 3 definitions then before we start? So programmatic we'll describe as trade automation between buyers and sellers. Addressable we'll describe as using advanced data sets to target advertising, whether on linear or on digital. And the third one, dynamic ad insertion, we'll use to describe inserting video ads over linear. Everybody good with that?
Doesn't
think we can work with that.
Too controversial.
We have a quorum. We don't have to have a panel then. We can go home. It's fine.
We're just happy you didn't ask us to define anything.
So I wanted to start off just talking about the power.
We want to introduce ourselves.
Very good point. Yes. Who are you?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Laurence. I'm a VP for Advanced Advertising and Data at Liberty Global, the mother company of Virgin Media and Telenet, to name a few. And I'm really happy to share a panel on a quota of 50-50. Last week was all about women empowerment and equality and gender equality and pay. And for the first time, I'm sharing a half and half female. So excited to be here. Thank you, MediaTel.
Lorne, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Hi. Lorne Brown. I'm the CEO of Operative, formerly known as Syntech Media. We're in the business of helping TV companies lean into the future of advanced TV.
And Anna Maria?
Yes, well, this is my 3rd week at RTL AdConnect as the Director of Sales and Business Development. But I've been at the broadcast company RTL for 9 years.
Yep. Brilliant, thank you. So now that we've passed that embarrassing omission of introductions, I'd like to talk about the power of programmatic and addressable. So we've heard so much about programmatic and addressable in the last few years as being this amazing kind of win-win situation for everybody, for broadcasters, for operators and agencies. And I just wanted to really quiz my panelists on whether you think that we're actually starting to see the fruits of that. And where are we seeing the fruits of that? Is it in trading efficiency? Is it in the power of the advertising, how effective it is? Or is it in yield for broadcasters or data owners? So quite an in-depth question, but it's the power of programmatic and addressable. And perhaps, Anna Maria, shall we start with you?
Sure. I think, first of all, I would like to mention that programmatic is just a way of payment. So when you go to the shop, you see something nice, you go to the counter, you want to pay cash or card, and the card part is the programmatic part. And in the shop, it sounds really easy, it goes smoothly. In reality, in media, it's not. For us as a broadcaster, programmatic and addressable, or the things you've been discussing, connected TV, are not just a product or a format, it's a basis for a long-term strategy. But it doesn't mean it's a walk in the park. In the Netherlands, we grew from 30 to 65% in selling programmatically. But we also grew from 9 to 40% of our inventory goes through connected TV. And all these elements come together. And what you get with programmatic is that the buyer is in charge of the buying and programmatic part, the client. So they want relevance, they want data, they want profiling, they need a good DSP, they want the premium content. Obviously, they want to pay the lowest price, fixed, not in an auction, which only, from our point of view, happens in Disneyland where magic happens. So this is very complicated. And then at one point, you don't want to reach just one person, you need a lot of reach. And this is where it gets complicated. So I don't think it's the holy grail at the moment. I think it's for the future very important to invest in that. But we need more people. We need more, especially from a broadcaster point of view, good tech solutions.
Yep.
And simplify product and tech.
Yeah,
so,
and I think what is the holy grail is choice of business model, right?
Yeah.
Because there's certain buyers that want to buy programmatically. There's some buyers that are leaning into addressable, and there's linear buyers that also want to get involved with that without changing their cost method or the way that they do business today. And so I always like to bring it back to growth, and everyone believes there's this huge growth opportunity Omar Sheikh from Credit Suisse, now at Morgan Stanley, who runs the media and entertainment vertical, last year called 100 billion of global incremental dollars going to what he called targeted TV.
Yeah.
And he believes that the beneficiaries of those will be companies like yourselves, the large TV companies. And I think there's a nice window right now and some tailwinds because of what's going on with Facebook and Google and their content and the MRC coming in and looking at the way that these companies measure. But there's also a lot of headwinds because TV companies are so fragmented. That's what makes them different than Facebook and Google, where Facebook and Google have one platform and one platform only with one inventory source. TV companies have it sitting in silos across these horizontal swim lanes. So I trade linear this way, and I trade digital this way, and I trade addressable this way, and I might have to trade programmatically this way. And so the biggest opportunity that is really about unlocking all of the audience scale together has to go vertically across all those different things. And I believe, as I think a lot of people in the room believe, that TV itself has to become more of a platform, right? The leading TV companies in each global marketplace need to unify what they're doing because one TV company on their own doesn't have the power to unlock those dollars because agencies want simplicity and control.
So I totally agree with you. The long-term aim is this holistic system able to plan and target across digital, across linear, every single channel. But we've also got to think pragmatically, what are the simplest next steps and the simplest next steps that are going to drive the most revenue? So when you say targeted TV, where do you see the most revenue coming from?
In linear. And I think this is where I believe that the platforms, the way we've been calling like pay TV platforms, still have a place to play in this game. So if you look at Facebook and Google, advertisers wanted more data, more attribution, more scale, easy to trade. If you look at what Sky has done in the UK, and is they have data. They have also confidence from the customer who've given away their data because they know they are in confidence, maybe not in the Google, say for Google and Facebook. They have scale, and they're growing scale by joining us or asking us to join them. Virgin Media to create that scale up to 14 million household, which is more than half of the household in the UK, to deliver addressable in the foreseeable future. Attribution, because we can then see how linear addressable will have been delivered. And trading, because actually Sky Media in the UK is also a trading house. This is a model we've replicated in Belgium, where Telenet in the Flanders is our largest platform, and we've made a partnership with the broadcaster SBS to bring addressable to the market. We've only launched in September, but we're already driving money back from digital to TV and seeing a very significant growth in trading in Belgium. Because at the end of the day, if there's no broadcaster in the house, no platform will continue to exist. And I agree with you, the silos and the fragmentation of the market is very hard, which is probably why programmatic has not really grown. But I think addressable is the right place to start.
Can I just confirm something? So in your partnership with Sky and your trials in Belgium or Benelux, are you talking about dynamic ad insertion addressable, or are you talking about addressable linear, as in using advanced data sets to target strategic target audiences, but on a linear kind of burn?
Yeah, at the moment it's linear.
Ad. So the latter or the former?
The latter.
The latter.
It's using the linear schedule combined with the power of the data that the platform owns to do targeted insertion from the set-top box, but with a cloud-based solution to define the ad decisioning.
I mean, I agree with Lorne about his point about needing to be better structured as a platform from the broadcast point of view, and I absolutely agree that there is an incredible opportunity now with the tailwinds of this reaction against the duopoly and real questions, right questions by the advertisers to try and understand, whether these are the right environments for their business to advertise in. And I think that is an incredible opportunity for not just broadcasters, premium publishers from around the world, and especially in Europe. I think one of the kind of significant short-term challenges for programmatic growth, though, actually resides inside the agency and the way that's structured. I spend a lot of time talking to TV buyers. I was a TV sales guy once upon a time, And there's quite a lot of change culturally that needs to happen at the agency. We're seeing digital teams, VOD teams moving into the AV teams, so it's kind of sitting together. But in terms of the abilities across many of the agencies and the TV departments, there still needs to be quite a lot of training for TV guys to learn how to work in this new space. So I think that's going to have, once that starts playing out and that new knowledge of how to trade away from the panel, away from Barb, starts occurring, then you're going to see.
Well, I don't think they're going to change in time, right? And I think the media companies around the world need to step up and take a leadership position, just like Facebook and Google did. So if you think about an idea of TV being a platform, what does that mean? And it is a right now kind of thing, right? You've got to get the measurement right, you've got to get the technology right, and you have to have scale. So there's all this M&A going on. And so TV companies really need to create operating systems, just like Apple or Amazon have done, right? And be able to do things, and let's borrow from some other industries, these concepts of supply chain management. I've got different pieces of supply that weren't designed to talk to each other. I need abstraction layers to hide back-end details because I can't show my complexity to the agencies, and I need APIs to communicate. And so if I have those operating system-like capabilities, then I could take a leadership position with the agencies and say, buy however you want. If you want to buy using a rating point, I got that. If you want to buy using an audience segment that, by the way, is going to borrow linear inventory that I'm also selling using a rating point, well, I have that too. So lining up to their execution methods, their measurement types, their transaction styles, their cost methods, and that's how at least I see TV companies needing to grow, because yes, like you have to protect the core, there's the linear business, but if I want to go to Brands Direct or I have a buyer that wants to buy a certain way, I have to do that with simplicity, but at the same time, retaining the necessary control, the yield component, because I have to decide who's going to get what parts of my inventory, and I have to use it all together.
Well, the good news is that I believe that we have the agency side presentation coming up next, where Jacob from Finecast is going to be telling us how media agencies are changing in order to take on the challenge of addressable TV. So
I think some will change faster than others, by the way.
So I guess we can heckle him afterwards in his presentation if we don't think he's doing good enough. So I think this focus on media agencies, great focus. Let's wait to see Jacob's presentation. But it's interesting that the panel there seems to be this quorum on the fact that the real opportunity lies in addressable linear. Now, Anna Maria and Andrew, I know that your area is a bit more focused on IP-delivered advertising, so digital advertising, and maybe would you argue against that at all? Would you say that actually there's a big future in dynamic ad insertion into linear?
Well, we certainly see it in our business. I think in the presentation I referenced how we're beginning to see trading automation occur in our Australian market. We've got a very different business in Australia because we work with all of the main broadcasters. So that gives our broadcasters, because we are the only platform they work with, it gives them that scale, but it also gives them the opportunity to have that conversation with the agencies on their terms about how they want to trade. So I mentioned before, we've seen just very recently the Winter Olympics in Australia, where effectively upfronts were traded programmatically by Channel 7, and they even opened up some auction-based trading during the late market. Now, for those of us that have worked in TV sales, buying or selling, late sales is an absolute nightmare. You never really feel like you're getting the value. No one's particularly happy with it. So letting the auction determine the price was quite an interesting experiment. I think it points and augurs for the future for certainly our business and potentially TV markets elsewhere. And
Anna Maria, you mentioned that you felt, not having an auction was like Disneyland.
Disneyland's in Sydney.
I mean, I have many things in my Disneyland.
Personally, I like Disneyland, and I think programmatic guaranteed is the future, but then...
No, I agree completely. It's just, one element that is changing, because from a broadcaster point of view, we are dealing with viewers who are changing into users. They're using devices, they're watching a lot of video, but they're watching it differently, so they pay for some elements, they don't pay. They're switching over to connected TV. I mean, I have kids, they watch on a traditional device one of our best influencers via YouTube on connected TV. So this is something we should consider, is that they are using a traditional device, but the way they're watching it and the content they're watching is completely different. So considering a consumer, we have to keep that in mind and deal with all of these elements, because it sounds very easy. You know, you have the platform, you need data, but that means like an army of people and knowledge, and you have to take it out of the daily business, because our daily business is TV, and that will be a big element, and innovate. And I think distribution is also something important. And even, I think you mentioned it earlier, we asked the younger generation, what are your favorite TV channels? They came up with 55 YouTube channels. So this is the way they're thinking, you know? Imagine watching 55 channels on TV. It's like a different consumer you have to deal with. And I think distribution is also a big part of it. You need to have a good distribution, which we have as a broadcaster with YouTube, which is not very common. But we push our content towards YouTube because it's a distribution platform for us, and also the influencer content on a new device. So it tackles a lot of elements. Yeah. And just to give you an idea, in the Netherlands, we have one guy who's head of EdTech. And we did, just another example, we wanted to push linear TV on our mobile. So we're like, okay, you have 6 minutes, you want to change the ad, and there's this guy, you know Marcel, who's really good in ad tech. And he woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he had to count the seconds, because you don't want, if you're watching it on television and I'm on my mobile, black and then one relevant ad. So it takes like an army of tech people, and then the personalization comes into place, because everyone wants data and insights and stuff like that, which I hate the word data now. But imagine only showing personalized ads on your mobile. Yep. And I told you before, I don't even have enough hobbies and interests to fill 6 minutes. Yeah. Because apparently I'm a loser. But those are things to consider.
Okay, I want to change the topic of discussion slightly.
I don't know if it answers your question, but at least I had some...
It was a good rant.
Yeah,
it was a good rant, yeah.
For a couple of minutes.
I want to change the topic of discussion, but I also want to prepare our audience. So we're going to spend 5 minutes on this next thing, but then if you've got any questions, I want you to prepare them now. So what I wanted to chat about was the role of the platform, because we've got, of course, Laurence representing Liberty, who own a lot of platforms. We've got Maria representing the broadcaster. And I've just been interested to see in the news in the last year or so, there's been quite a lot of trials or partnerships going on between broadcasters and device manufacturers. So we have RTL doing tests with dynamic ad insertion over linear, but using HbbTV devices. We've got UK broadcasters such as ITV and Channel 4 announcing partnerships with Sorensen in order to power, I believe, or trials on dynamic ad insertion over linear, but on Samsung TVs. Now, what I'm interested about here is that if we're seeing broadcasters working directly together with device manufacturers, and device manufacturers developing technology to look at the stream and substitute ads, no matter what the platform is that's delivering that stream, is that some form of threat to the existing business models with respect to platform operators? I mean, is this something you're worried about, Laurence? Is this something you're losing sleep over?
So I'd like to ask the audience, is there anybody really happy with the recommendation engine on their connected TV without using Sky or Virgin? Because that's the problem. The manufacturers, they don't give a shit about the experience. They just want to sell more HD, bigger screen TV. So I don't, maybe I'm wrong, and but I'm not a futuristic, but I wouldn't bet on the manufacturers to find the ways. And I think it took almost 10 years for Sky to come with a frame-accurate insertion into the set-top box for addressability. 10 years. Again, those are the kind of scale. And bravo. But this is the kind of work that telcos have the armies of ad tech people, and those manufacturers, I don't believe so. So I don't really, it might work, but I still believe the platform is the first. Second, it's also drives the point of commonality of specs, and I'm really sad that my colleague Gert is not here from Proximus, because actually, even though we're competing in each market, and then Sky and Virgin are competing in the market on customers acquisition, we are not competing on tech. We are wanting to have all the broadcasters following the same SCT, like SCT markers, and whatever you call them, because we don't want a broadcaster to go to one platform in one country with one spec, another platform in another country in another spec, or even the same country, like in Belgium, with 3 different specs. So I do think that, again, the telco have a game to play, the platforms, into defining standards that will make and accelerate the take of new advertising into our ecosystem.
Yeah.
And we are doing it. We are doing it.
So standards, user experience, technology, relationship with the consumer.
But also standards across the board, because at the end of the day, again, we want the brands to be able to place and get the best on their money, and it's also standardization of measurement.
Yeah.
So, we like to think that over time we would move to impression-based.
Yeah.
And that's very standard. We also want to make sure that we continue, sorry, I'm also going on the rant, but we also keep the customer at the heart of everything we do. Yeah. And those black screens that you mentioned, this is the one thing that you must absolutely avoid, because that's a really poor customer experience. So standardization and on tech and measurement is...
So can I just ask, sorry chaps, I just want to get Anna Maria's take on this as well, because from a broadcast point of view, if you had a choice of working with, say, Ziggo in the Netherlands, to one of the platform operators there, to insert ads dynamically, or working directly with a connected TV manufacturer like Samsung or LG, is there any particular preference? Have you any thoughts on that? Do you just view them as different potential distribution channels?
You know what, we will develop on every aspect. So if there's an opportunity with Ziggo to discuss development, we would do it. We do it with YouTube, we do it with every party, also a tech. So we would not exclude anyone.
Who has the more realistic...
Very short answer, yeah.
Who has the more realistic commercial expectations as to the value of the service they're providing?
Like in the whole chain?
Yeah,
like,
in the value chain. Like, I guess the point is people don't want to provide services for free. So if you notice the difference between, a connected TV manufacturers coming in and saying we'll provide the service at 2% CPM, whereas platform operators are coming in saying they'll provide the service at 20% CPM, or I don't know, I'm guessing.
Well, I don't know either. I mean,
no? I don't think they care very much, to be quite honest. This is such a tiny part of Samsung's business. But I think what is completely relevant is that media companies need to, distributors need to be content providers need to be distributors, and everyone has to start to think about how they could expand their audiences. And they're going to do all those things, and they're going to do lots and lots of M&A. And what's ultimately going to happen is they'll be sitting behind these massive, massive audiences that need to be unlocked. And they'll be unlocked using addressable capabilities. And I actually believed for a long time that everything would move to impressions, especially for the operators. But with GDPR and some of these other initiatives that are in the space right now, it's very clear that there'll be this world of coexistence where things are not going to be down to the addressable household or down to the individualized person, maybe forever. Right? There'll be a need for a panel in place, whether that's Barb here or that's Bark in India or Nielsen in the U.S. or all these different panel ratings, coupled with companies that are investing in data as they should, and there'll be this world where things will have to coexist for a very, very long time. And that's where I think, not to go back to the platform idea, but these operating system concepts where there needs to be yield management like never before, because I'm selling apples and oranges and I'm selling these different fruits in between that borrow from apples and oranges. So, media companies are very smart, and the agencies are smart too, and they're going to know, like, wait a second, if I buy a rating point with this media company, I'm actually getting more audiences for this type of segment, and so I'm going to buy it versus buying an impression and a data segment, or I'm going to buy this data segment because that's cheaper and there's too much waste in my rating point or my spot. And so they're trying to, no offense to the agencies, disintermediate the media companies and try to get the most efficient, just code for cheap, inventory that they can from a media company to hit their target audience. So, there needs to be a workflow or some type of
complexity. Sorry to interrupt. Is it like
complexity, yeah.
Yeah, because you want to reduce the waste. You want an audience. All of these elements, and I don't.
The more you innovate, the more complexity shows up, which is ironic in a way. But that's the way to go get money from Facebook and Google, because I think a lot of the agencies. I'd be interested to hear what you think. That doesn't feel like succeeding to me, buying from Facebook and Google. That feels like failing, just because the content is not professionally produced. Facebook's only spending, we saw some of the other stats on your presentation, Facebook wasn't up there because they're only spending $1 billion, and they're not changing that this year. And Google's not spending that much money either.
Well, I think the frustration for the agencies that I talk to is that the advertiser comes through and increasingly it's like 80% of the budget that's going to the duopoly, and they're scrapping around trying to fulfill deals with everything that's left. It's really difficult to run a business like that. So it is that is the problem that has to be fixed.
But if I can reach those audiences in a premium environment, which these two companies are very good at doing and are very mature at doing and are investing a lot of money in doing, then if I could use my complexity as a strategic advantage, which is where I think the market needs to go, well,
what do you mean by that? That broadcasters should create walled gardens? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the
like one big walled garden for all broadcasters.
Yeah, in the UK, I think where this ends is the biggest media companies will collaborate in some way to create standards, to create unified technology, to unlock the scale that they have, because the agencies don't want to measure things across 5 different broadcasters in different ways.
Yeah.
That's why linear works today, is because they have the local panel currency, and then they could decide how they want to buy, and they could decide how they want to optimize, and they can decide what they want to buy again. But if RTL is doing it one way, or another company's doing it another way, then that still feels complex, and I don't want to deal with your complexity, so I'm going to reject you and keep buying from Facebook and Google because I get the scale I want, even though the content is subpar.
Okay, this is really interesting discussion here, because we're getting to the crux of the matter, which is what are the next steps, like the easy, achievable next steps. But I promised audience questions, so just briefly, I want to see whether we've got 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Has anybody prepared anything? I cannot see any hands up. Okay, people are maybe raring to hear next steps. Okay, well, I'll come back in a moment if we've got time. Okay, we're getting quite heated here. We're saying that you're saying broadcasters need to come together and create some sort of broadcast-wide walled garden, but then again, we've got
it's Jacob, an open walled garden. It'll be open.
We've got Jacob giving the agency view on this, I believe. Well, no, but
come on up, bro.
Well, you're going to be coming up in a moment and telling us the agency's responses. So basically,
can I just add one thing about the walled garden? Because as a broadcaster, I'm not going to reject the walled garden. I think from a client point of view, it's not really something they want. The question is, who are you creating the walled garden with? Is it only the broadcasters, or is it also with the agencies? Yeah. So you can tackle measurement and stuff like that. We think strategically we should focus, and this is, I'm like leading you into the panel, also work with agencies on this matter. Just to give you an example, the Dutch market is really small. It's like 120 million video money, and 70% is owned by Facebook and Google. So we are all competing for just a really small amount. So strategically working with agencies would really work for us.
And is the competitive threat of Google and Facebook going to do more to drive this ahead than anything else, would you say?
I think it's going to drive the collaboration. I don't want to speak for Anne-Marie's business, but that must be one of the factors that brought RTL to consolidate their business in the AdConnect offering. It's definitely the driver behind the EBX project, because that's about the scale that Lorne described as being essential. It's about building technology for the future, but it's also about having conversations with Unilever, for instance, at scale across Europe. And I'm watching that with great interest, because I think for all broadcasters and publishers around the world, I think we're wising up. Consumers are wising up to the way that Google and Facebook works. And we work a lot with premium publishers. Google changed their news feed just because they made a policy decision. It put a load of our publishers out of business, just like that. So you have to build strategies to protect yourself against their presence.
If I may say, I think you're comparing a number, and it's the same in the UK. The broadcast premium video advertising is a fraction of the Facebook and Google. But linear is still very much fighting. I mean, in the UK, 50% of Facebook and Google, but nevertheless still fighting, and it's standing there. So if you think the analogy of what the UK market has done, where the on-demand video only on multi-platform is about 200 million, and Sky's media house has roughly 70 million. That's about 10% of their total media revenue. If you apply those 10% extra to Channel 4 and ITV in the UK, then all of a sudden you have grown significantly the addressable on demand. And I think I wouldn't underestimate the role of the platform has to play. The second thing is a lot of the viewing is still going back to the platform, even if it's time shift or on demand, and on the main set-top box. And we are here also to support that, because some of these eyeballs, 80% of these eyeballs actually who are seen on time shifts are being skipped, and therefore we've lost the commercial impact. And I think the platforms are there to play a role in bringing back these audiences and these impacts back to the broadcasters. So I really wouldn't underestimate the platform broadcaster ecosystem, because at the end of the day, without distribution, there's no more broadcaster at all. At the moment, it might change over time, but at the moment, and without broadcasters, there's no TV pay platform premium as well. So my view is really that we need to nourish this ecosystem, enable the broadcaster to recoup some of their broadcast impacts that they have lost, some of them through our fault, and then keeping the customer experience intact, and bring back some money from digital.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'll even sort of go one step further. The capability, and this I'll define walled garden, is a large agency in a single market, and this is not what I think is going to happen, but needs to be able to buy from every TV company in a single ad buy. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but what I do see happening is what you just said, is that the large distributors and the content companies, who need each other very much, not just for distribution and exchange of money, but for data, and I hate that word, sorry for using it.
Yeah.
But those two need to work together, and I believe what you will see is the top 3 or 4 or 5 companies in each market be the front of the market, where lots of smaller media companies will wind up, let's call them market makers and market members. Market members will join in on these bigger media companies because they won't be able to afford to go at it themselves. They'll need to join in on these much bigger marketplaces in order for themselves to get scale. And I believe that's where the marketplace is going. You see this in the US with NBC already being acquired, and their Comcast is one. And if the AT&T Turner deal closes, they'll be one. And I believe there'll be 7 companies left standing in 5 years or so in the US, and it'll be the 3 or 4 largest MVPDs with the 1 or 2 largest content companies as a single unit, either through M&A or deliberate partnership, and then Amazon, Facebook, and Google. And I think that's going to happen around the world, because if TV really wants to pry those dollars away, they have to operate much more like a platform.
Okay, I'd like us to summarize some of these next steps then. Anna Maria is running off the airport. We've got just a few minutes.
Bye.
Yeah.
Drop the mic.
We've just got a couple of minutes.
This goes my gender equality.
What is, I like how you were ignoring me, but that's okay. What is the most important next step that should happen? I mean, is it, if you could have just one thing happen in the market by the end of this year, what would it be? Unified measurement? It would be collaboration in sales houses? I mean, that's maybe your point, Lorne.
Well, I think more collaboration of sales houses, measurement.
Yeah.
Measurement is important, but it can't be the reason people fail.
Yeah.
Measurement initiatives are extremely long. They take a long time to put together.
So it's
a lot
collaboration
of
of sales houses.
And then getting the agencies involved, because they're involved with it too, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think the call to action is how do we work towards unification of transaction models, of data segment creation, and other things along advanced TV lines that are going to help media companies grow. But I think if you're a media company in the room and outside of linear, you have a business model in mind that you want to pursue, then think about how to put some foundational pieces in place to satisfy that one business model. Don't try to boil the ocean, because in the end, if you're a big media company, you have to, you have really three choices. You can bet on yourself, you can use a programmatic company to help you deal with that complexity, but you'll lose some margin in the process, or you can give up and see what happens.
Yep. Okay. What's your call to action, Andrew?
Yeah, I think it's what Lorne described. It's what I've talked about with EBX and AdConnect. It's about collaboration technologically, commercially, getting the right infrastructure behind you with businesses like Liberty. It's getting that scale so you can have that right conversation. And then I think at the kind of more operational end, it is about changing habits and behaviors at the agency to make execution easier. And I think for us, with our experience, it's for the broadcasters not to have fear about programmatic, because there's too many instances now, too many examples in other markets where businesses have really benefited from applying programmatic to their trading.
And finally, Laurence, what would your call to action be to get things moving?
Accelerate what we've already started, which is on the cooperation side, especially on the tech side, allowing same spectrum, same requirements, and being agile around it. Accelerate go-to-market, because unless we take our piece now, the others, the GAFAs, will continue to accelerate their growth, and they're very agile. When you look at they're always changing to the market. YouTube changed their ad rules every 6 months because they follow the market. And we're still wondering, should we allow fast forwarding of ads or not? I think we need to take our space there.
Yeah.
And I do believe in this industry. It's a fascinating industry. And I know people always take their kids' analogy, but actually, my children, they're recognizing the BBC, for example. So I think the brands and the media brands have trust, and our customers have lost trust in Facebook and Google, but we have an opportunity. And I always say that GDPR is actually an opportunity, not a threat, in a way to regain that customer confidence.
Brilliant. Well, we've run out of time, so it just leaves me to thank what remains of our panel. So thank you very much for a very insightful conversation. Thank you.